My brother kept jump scaring me for years, then I got back at him so bad he cried. So, when my brother and I were young, he was about 7 and I was 10, he found out that I was very easily scared. The slightest sudden noise could make me jump out of my skin and get a scream from me. This would usually manifest in him hiding behind things and popping out with a loud, boo. And he would get me every time. It got so bad that I was scared to even walk the halls of my house. After a couple years of this, my parents stepped in and told him to cut it out. It definitely slowed down, but he would do the occasional spook and get me. That is until one fateful night in 2012. My family and I were big fans of Doctor Who, and it had entered its 6th series and introduced a new monster, the Silents. For those who don't know, the Silents look like somewhat generic grey aliens in a nice 3-piece suit. The catch was that every time a character would look away from the alien, they'd forget about it. So what the characters would do is put tally marks on their forearms and face whenever they see one. It was a very good idea for a monster and wonderfully executed in those first 2 episodes. During the 2nd episode, there's a character in an abandoned orphanage and she's looking out the window, lightning strikes and her face and arms are full of tally marks. It's a very good scare. So good in fact, that I notice my brother is acting uneasy. So then I have an idea. A most horrible idea. A delightfully devilish idea. A petty idea. I ask my father to pause the episode, 'cause I needed to go to the bathroom. I lied. I didn't need to go to the bathroom. I grabbed a Sharpie and wrote a bunch of tally marks all over my face and arms. I was absolutely giddy. Then, with my game face on, I go back downstairs to the TV room. I turn on the lights. This makes my brother ask what was up and he turns his head to look at me. He starts freaking the fuck out. Like he was back crawling towards our dad. My dad asks what's wrong, looks at my face, and starts laughing his ass off. I act like nothing happened and got closer to my brother, feigning concern. That freaked him out even more. After my dad and I had our laughs, he told me to wash up. My brother couldn't continue the episode, so he runs to his room. My dad calls my mum and tells her that I finally got one over my bro. Nowadays there are no more pranks between me and my brother. He's graduating with his bachelor's degree and is one of my groomsmen in my wedding. He's a good man and I'm very proud of him and I love him very much. Gas rewards. I only had a bar of soap in my hand at the supermarket, and as I headed toward the 12 items or less line, a Karen with a half-full cart sped up and swooped in front of me, banging my arm with the front corner of the cart. No apology. As she was putting her items on the conveyor belt, I started counting out loud, 1, 2, 3, just to make a point. A small petty revenge. Around the time I hit 20, a woman joined the line behind me, saw what I was doing, and she began counting with me. Kinda like a 2-part harmony, that ended at 31. Karen ignored us, but then there was an item that didn't scan with the proper price, so the cashier had to page for a price check. Another 2 minutes went by until the kid came back with a barcode for the cashier. When the cashier announced the total, Karen realized that her loyalty number wasn't in, and told the cashier it needed to be there, because I used the gas rewards. When the cashier asked for her phone number, I pulled out my phone and typed it in to save it. The woman behind me, who had been counting with me, asked me in a whisper if I were planning on giving Karen a call. She started laughing when I told her I was planning on going to the gas station and using the phone number for the gas rewards. Here would be the petty revenge. I checked out and went straight to the pumps, entered the customer's phone number for the gas rewards, and got a 40-cent per gallon discount on my gas that day. Panhandler gets revenge on herself. Years ago, I worked at a small real estate office on a very busy corner in a Chicago suburb. We got an inordinate amount of beggars. One morning, I come in, get my morning activities done, and I notice a lot of our plants are drooping. I figured I'd water them while taking a break. Since the secretary usually does this, I ask the secretary if she has a pitcher she usually uses. She tells me this day, I think it was a Friday, is when she feeds the plants. She tells me to take a super heaping big scoop of plant food, dissolve it into a thin slurry with a little water, and then pour a little in each plant before coming back to water the plants with straight water. Okay. So, I put a huge scoop in an empty Dunkin' Donuts coffee cup because I don't see a pitcher or bucket or anything substantial. I assume you already see where this is going. I stir it up and it's kinda thick and blue. I bring it to the secretary's desk. She starts laughing and says she dissolves it in a pitcher. She tells me where the pitcher is and puts a cover on the Dunkin' cup before she starts swirling it to mix it more. This gets really contrived, so I'll cut to the chase. I get the pitcher, and while I was in the kitchen filling it, I poured some coffee in regular glass mugs and brought it all up front for us. We're chatting when a beggar walks in. She's dressed normally and gives us the standard stories that are almost always, "I haven't eaten in 3 days," and "I need to take a bus downtown for my AIDS treatment." I don't know why they all use those 2 lines, but since we heard it a dozen times a day, we knew it was the standard scam. Anyway, she asks for money. We say no, and she busts out another line we heard multiple times a day from beggars we turn down. "You rich real estate brokers are cheap bumholes." She sees the Dunkin' Donuts cup. She asks if we can at least give her a couple dollars for a cup of Dunkin'. We say no. She asks if we can give her a mug of coffee. We say no. "I'm not giving anything to someone who just called me a cheap bumhole." She says, "Fine. I'll just take this," and she literally snatches the Dunkin' cup from the secretary's hand. She runs out triumphantly, hollering something we didn't understand because we were in shock, and about to erupt with laughter. And now comes the self-revenge. Twofold. Almost 3. We watch through the wall of glass windows as she takes a big old healthy swig of Miracle Grow and realizes she's got a mouth full of chemicals. She doubles over and spits it all out. Self-revenge 1. She then whips the cup into the 95th Street traffic without looking and miraculously hits a squad car. Thick blue Miracle Grow sludge explodes across the side of the pristine white Evergreen Park police cruiser. The cop immediately slams on his brakes and jumps out. She's coughing and spitting and hacking and pointing at us. The cop talks to her for a minute and then comes in with her and says she's claiming we deliberately gave her poisoned coffee. We explain the situation and he mentions that he knows her because she panhandles at different businesses every day as she walks home from work. Yes, work. We later found out she's a teller at a bank down the street. We get her some water since she's looking a bit green around the gills. This was the early days of decent security cameras, but we had one and it was all on tape. The cop didn't even look at the footage and asks if we'd like to have her arrested for stealing our plant food. He's on the verge of laughing. We're already giggling since we know we're off the hook. The lady is blazing with anger and embarrassment and fear. We say not to arrest her since she punished herself for her stupidity. The cop then wrote her a ticket for $500 for littering. Revenge 2. I actually feel kinda bad about that. I think drinking Miracle Grow was more than enough punishment and we were willing to let her go. Revenge 3 would have been us having her arrested, but we're not scumbags. A possible 4th revenge could have been a battery charge. Maybe a cop or lawyer can back me up here, but this cop said that assaulting a vehicle that a police officer is in can be construed as battery against the officer. He kept threatening her with a battery charge against him when she'd start getting loud or woofy. She wanted us to go to prison for trying to poison her, and she kept spinning the story as if we invited her in and force-fed her a cup of cold blue slushy poison. She pushed that narrative even after we pointed out the camera and the secretary started queuing up the footage. It was almost comical how the cop completely dismissed the idea of the footage. He knew her game. Anyway, after saying he could charge her with battery for the umpteenth time, she said, "It was just a cup." He paused for a second and almost comically responded, "Only a few minutes ago, it was a cup of poison these people tried to kill you with. So, you threw a cup of poison at me that exploded all over my rig. You intentionally threw poison at me? How is that not an attempt to harm?" While I'm not sure if that's true about being able to charge her with battery, it certainly kept her in line as he sorted out what happened. You wake me up at night, I restrict your internet. Back in my college days I had a couple of roommates. For the most part we got along fine, we even still occasionally talk. However, one of them kept rather odd hours and would frequently be up all night and then sleep most of the day. Most of the time it wasn't a big deal, they'd just be on web forums all night or researching some bizarre topic or another. However, every once in a while they'd get it in their head to play like a Soviet-era opera rather loudly at around 2 to 3 a.m. Of all the ways to be woken up at 2 to 3 a.m., I can think of several that rank higher than that. After being woken up most every night for several days running, I decided to make sure it couldn't happen again. I had an old computer sitting around, so I installed Linux on it and then set up the Squid proxy server. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, the only important part for the purposes of this story is that it allowed me to throttle the bandwidth on the roommate's computer. I set it up so that they shouldn't have any problems downloading web pages, but if anything over about 3 to 5 megabytes, such as an MP3 file, would get slowed down to the point it was effectively stalled. Never again was I awoken to the sounds of Soviet operas or similar bits of music. Share your story in the comments, I would love to add them to a video.